So, up next, I am so excited to introduce our second speaker of the night. Our second speaker of the night is Victoria. Um, all right, so up next, I am so excited to introduce Victoria. And I have three fun facts about Victoria. Victoria was a top 40 finalist for So You Think You Can Dance Canada Season 2. Her parents named her after the intersection where she grew up, which was at Victoria Park and Cassandra Boulevard. Scarborough, yeah. And she lived in China for a year and taught English to children. Victoria, come on up here or dance on up here and share your fuck up.
No joke. I was dancing to this 3 a.m. last night. I was like, yeah, gotta love some ex-Tina to get you through the hard nights. Am I right, ladies? Yeah. I was gonna make a joke about what was that music video she did that was wildly inappropriate when we were young? My husband and I were talking about that earlier. Anyways, I am so happy to be back here. As Marsha alluded to, I am a repeat offender of many fuck ups, many that I will be sharing tonight, and some new ones. I had to bring them on paper because I've had 24 hours notice to prep for this. So um, buckle up. But I want to formally introduce myself. I'm Victoria. I'm the co-founder of Mave Chez. We named the company after our late grandmothers, Mavis and Shayna, and our whole brand is about helping women step into each day with confidence and support with fancy little slippers. So, you heard from my fun facts, but my journey does start in dance. I'm very familiar with embarrassing myself. I don't know about many of you, but I inherited like a clumsy gene. So, although I was always a very graceful dancer growing up, I also fell on stage all the time and had to get back up and keep going. At one point as a young dancer, like actually in my pointe shoes, that was when I was a Sugar Plum Fairy, I actually fell off stage, which is really hard to do. But I like to think that it gives me the resilience. Hopefully I don't fall off this stage, but it is a big part of who I am. And it's actually how I met my co-founder, Danny. She just had a baby 2 weeks ago. So the last time we did our Fuckup Nights talk, she was here right beside me, but she's taking care of her second babe. So about 15 years ago, her and I met at the auditions at the University of Toronto. Any U of T alumni? Yeah. Yes, we have a varsity dance team. Yes, believe it or not. So we both auditioned for the team. It was like a kismet moment. I was doing like a big, like a jeté. I can't really do it anymore, but we locked eyes in the audition, and it was just, there was some magical universal energy that we were meant to do incredible things together. So a year later, we ended up becoming co-captains of that dance team. And we were so passionate about this dance team. Like, we saw all the football and soccer teams getting all of this funding, and we're like, we're gonna make this the best dance team in Canada. And we started doing pub nights and fundraisers and bake sales and dancing on tables at the Brunny. We did everything we could to raise money for that dance team. No shame. No shame. And it led to us a few years down the road starting two very successful events companies. We had a real knack for bringing people together, running very successful events. And we had two businesses, Stratus Events, it was a client-facing business, and this organization called City Moguls, which a lot of former members are actually out in the audience, which is pretty wild. City Moguls was an entrepreneur community. We did a fashion show each year that celebrated entrepreneurs in a big runway show for charity. And things were going super duper duper well. By 2019, we were having people like Michelle Romano and Joanna Griffiths walk in our show, and we just really felt on top of the world. And we all know what happens next. So the pandemic hit, which I feel like is a big, fuck up, uncontrollable fuck up. But, 99% of what Danny and I were doing with our businesses was in person. And overnight, all of our clients canceled their events. this huge event that we did every year was completely gone. So we did a quick pivot. We pivoted City Moguls into an online entrepreneur community, started doing some mastermind programs. I found this photo and I was like, oh my God, we had a book club? I didn't even know that. So we were doing some really cool things to support the community. But I remember this key moment with one of our mentors, and he ended up being our first investor, and he looked at us and he was like, girls, like, events aren't coming back. We're like, they're gonna come back in a few months. He's like, no, 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 no. Like, what are you gonna do with this time? How are you gonna make an impact? And Danny and I we're like lifetime business partners. We've been doing this 15 years, like I said, and we've always wanted to create a product for women. It was something we always wanted to do. We had a lot of really stupid ideas. But it was my co-founder getting pregnant for the first time, walking around her house all day during the pandemic in bare feet. She started getting excruciating pain in her back, knee, and hips. So she went and talked with a podiatrist. And when she asked the podiatrist for a slipper recommendation, she said, oh, I never recommend slippers. I only recommend Birkenstocks and running shoes. And she literally like called me in a panic and she's like, I know what we're gonna create. I was like, what? And she's like, we're gonna create a sexy, ergonomic slipper that women are gonna wear all day, everywhere they go. And I was like, well, let's fucking go. All right. So that's literally how it started. I mean, there's a lot of messy details in there of some other product ideas, but we really saw this. We spoke with hundreds and thousands of women and realized that we weren't the only ones that thought this was a pretty neat idea. And, we were ready to go all in. Did we have CPG experience? Absolutely not. Did we have a fashion background? Not really. We had put together some fashion shows, but we really believed in this product and that it could really help women. And we were willing to figure out what it would take. So we were still running City Moguls as this online community. So we decided to kind of divide and conquer. Danny would focus on getting the product off the ground, doing the research and development. We found a footwear technician in the US that could help us create like our napkin drawing of our slipper from scratch. And I was gonna focus on operating City Moguls. At the time, we had about 250 paying members, and they were paying for masterminds, programs, memberships, all of these things. And this was the first time, honestly, in Danny and I's 15-year journey that I started just getting very annoyed and having this like feeling of resentment because I was seeing what she was doing over there, and she was like, well, I'm like, why don't you care about our first baby anymore? And then she was seeing me over there and she's like, well, I need you here because you do all the operating and marketing. Like, what are you doing over there? And it was like the first time in our entire relationship where we weren't seeing eye to eye and our visions were like completely different because I still felt this like potential in City Moguls and that it really could become something. Like I wasn't ready to let it go yet. So it got to this point where we were, really arguing. We ended up getting like a coach to like work through our issues because we were really butting heads and we were like, what are we gonna do? And the signs were there. Like I was definitely starting to get burnt out. This was 2022 at the time. Like the need for virtual events was changing. Like the signs were there. But I think this is one of the biggest things, and this is the first of a few fuck ups that I'll share is like, how do we know when it's time to let go of something? When it's like our baby and we believe in it, like how do we really know when it's time to let go? And, it just got to this point where there was so much infinite potential with Mave Chez that we were like, we just have to rip the Band-Aid. So we still had all of our members had paid for a year to be a part of our community, and we were about 5 months into that year. We ripped the Band-Aid. We told people we were canceling our programming, that we were closing the business, and we couldn't pay people back. And that's a really shitty feeling when people have paid to have access to your programming and services. So that was a really shitty feeling, and most people were understanding and very supportive, but we still live with that regret of saying we were gonna do something and we didn't do it. But now we were all in on Mave Chez. And that's the crazy thing that happens when you go all in on something and you just fully immerse yourself in it. that's when the magic really starts to happen. So we had gotten a lot of advice that one of the best ways to launch a product, especially when you completely create it from scratch, is to do a crowdfunding campaign, because it can help you validate the product in the market. It can build a lot of buzz if you do it right. So we're like, okay, we're all in. If you're thinking about doing a crowdfunding campaign, read this book called Crowdfunded by Mark Pakoda. It was like my Bible for a year. And we spent about, 8 months literally going to every event where we would meet women and just being savage. Hey, do you wear slippers at home? Great, we're launching the dream slipper. Will you join our pre-sale list? And literally collecting emails like they were just, Skittles. I don't know why that's the first word to come to my head. But we were savage about building that email list because we knew doing a Kickstarter campaign, especially in today's market, you have to be the people that bring the audience to the Kickstarter campaign. You can't depend on the algorithm anymore. So I'll never forget the day when we hit launch on our Kickstarter campaign. We locked ourselves in a hotel room in downtown Toronto. We're like, here we go. And we hit that launch button. And, within 24 hours, we had raised $25K. Little do people know that I was calling my mom, my second aunts. We locked ourselves in that room and we called every goddamn person we knew. That was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of phone calls. But it was really unreal. We ended up raising about $50K, and that was enough for us to order that first run of inventory, which was very exciting. So now the hard part came because we had to finish the prototype. We work with a family-run ethical factory in Brazil, and they were really struggling to grasp a lot of the details that we envisioned in our slipper. So we have a washable insole in here. There's this thing called Happy Toes technology so that they look more stylish but still have ergonomic support. And it was just a lot of things. So we went to Brazil, and that was pretty cool. But we were so antsy. We were thinking about our customers, and we're we need to just get this first one done. We were pushing our factory. So we pushed them hard. They got it done. We were so excited. We're okay, 2 weeks away from launch. We're almost there. And I'll never forget this. We ship out all of the slippers. We're so excited. We're oh my God, they're finally going to be wearing them. We can't wait to hear what they think. And literally 80% of our customers were they're beautiful. They're so supportive, great arch support, a little big. And we're what do you mean a little big? They're like a size too big, flopping off my feet big. And we're oh, okay, cool. That was 5 customers. And then that turned into 50. And then that turned into almost all of our customers. And we're okay, so the slippers are a size too big. Super costly mistake. We basically had to get all of those pairs back, send everybody a pair size down. And these are the mistakes that you make when you rush product development. Hindsight's 2020. If we had spent a little more time doing fit tests, because if there's one thing now that I'm a shuru, that I've learned is every person's foot is so different. So if we had just waited a little bit longer and done a few more fit tests, we probably wouldn't have this issue. But from fuck-ups does come innovation. So we actually realized that if we put in a second insole, a midsole, we call this our dual insole technology. We were able to patent this. This allows our women to customize the fit of their slipper so they can actually take out that bottom insole if their feet are swelling, which is very common for women that are postpartum or are going through menopause or honestly just on a plane for a long time. So they can take out that insole, and also for half sizes, it customizes their fit. So Fuck Up led to some innovation, which is good. Now's where it gets really interesting. So our product's here. We're so excited. We're oh my God, we're selling slippers. And the inventory was selling really, really fast, so fast that we couldn't build up the cash to order the inventory to come in time to fulfill our orders. So, and that's a common thing when you start a product. So we were thinking about what we could do because we wanted to keep revenues coming in even though we didn't have inventory in stock. So we started doing pre-orders. Pre-orders, the fun thing with pre-orders is customers are expecting like a deadline of when those are going to arrive. We didn't really think about that when we first started doing pre-orders. So a few months in, customers were like, hi, I've been waiting 3 months for my slippers to arrive. And we were like, right, we should probably be over-communicating with you guys. So that was a very good lesson. Now we over-communicate with our customers. But we finally had built up enough of a cash reserve and got some checks in from investors to order some inventory. So we put in our order. It was literally boxed up in the factory. And then we got photos like this from our factory in Brazil. So Brazil had had historical flooding, like the worst it had had in 30 years. The airport was blown out. This was literally that was our factory right there. Like it was fully covered in water. At first we were just like, is everybody okay? Like, how is everybody doing? Thankfully, everybody survived and was alive, but like a lot of our factory workers lost their homes. Like it was devastating to watch and see the videos. And this is the part of our story where I like to emphasize that, especially as entrepreneurs, there is so much that happens in our journey that is out of our control. And I feel one of the biggest things I've learned is the biggest thing I have control over is how I respond to situations. I used to be a very reactionary, emotional person and would just get so worked up and it was the end of the world. And now I have like a sit on things for 24 hours and then I choose to respond from like the best version of myself that I can. So we didn't know what was going on. We had assumed it was, everything was destroyed. So we learned our lesson from earlier on. We over-communicated with our customers, that they'd have to wait a little bit longer. A lot of them were super understanding. Some canceled their orders, but that's okay. And then a few weeks later, the factory got up and running. They sent us some slippers where the slippers were like soaked in mud, and they're like, do you think if we clean these, they will be good? I'm like, I don't think so. But about 60% of the order ended up being okay. So we were able to salvage a lot of it. But again, like you can't predict natural disasters or your entire shipment of inventory being washed up. So another reason why it's also good to have insurance, which we did have. So yeah. Then the craziest thing happened. Also a Dragon's Den story. Also a similar experience. I'll never forget. I'm from Burlington. I was walking to the Go because I took the Go train here today. I was on the phone with my mom, my daily call with my mom, and I felt like an unknown number calling in, and 99% of the time who answers an unknown number. But this one I was like, my gut was like, you got to answer this. I'm like, Mom, got to go, bye. And I picked up the phone, I answered it. It was this woman, and she was like, hey, I'm Paula from CBC Dragon's Den. I'm like, who? Because a little backstory, like we didn't apply for the show. At this point, we had only been a few weeks in market. Like we had just done our Kickstarter campaign. We were a few weeks in market, and she said, hey, we've been following your brand on social media. I think it's all the weird dances we do. They were probably like, these two would be entertaining. She said, we'd love for you to come to pitch to the Dragons. We have the season set, but if somebody drops out, like, would you come in last minute and be a call up is what they called it. And I was like, of course, yes, we will be there. Didn't talk to Danny or anything, but when Dragon's Den calls, you say yes. So a few weeks went by, we did this big launch party for our brand, and we just kind of forgot about it. I was like, maybe it was a dream. Maybe it didn't really happen, but it did. And then a Friday afternoon after going to a Blink-182 concert with my husband, You can imagine the state I was in. Um, I got a call at 11 a.m. from Paula, and she said, somebody dropped out this afternoon. Can you guys be here in 2 hours? Again, of course I'll be there. This can be done in 5 minutes. It's fine. And I called Danny. She was at our warehouse fulfilling stuff. I want to shout out Othership because it was my breath work that got me safely in the car to that studio. It was a Friday afternoon. We know what the Gardner is like. Like, the traffic was insane. And Danny called me and she's like, hey, they are bringing us in 10 minutes. Where are you? I'm like, in Mississauga. And I'm like, tell them I'm parking. Tell them I'm parking. So, she's stalling for me. I'm in Mississauga doing my Othership breath work, all my mantras, like, everything's always working out for me. It's going to be okay. I literally pulled up to outside of the CBC studio, which is just around the corner. They're like, you don't have time to park. They're like, put your four-ways on. I put my four-ways on. They brought me up in the elevator. They mic'd me in the elevator. I didn't even have time to see Danny, my co-founder. She literally was coming in from the other side. So they're like, okay, are you ready? I'm like, yep. And that's when I was like, Mom, Dad, the hundreds of thousands of dollars you paid on my dance training was worth it. But it did go really well. It was a great PR marketing experience, as I like to say, because we did get a deal from Two Dragons. Similar to Steve, we didn't take the deal behind the scenes, but the rocket ship that it gave us, this episode came out in our first year of business. Like, it was unreal, an unreal experience for us to witness. And we went from 30 to 40K a month to 4Xing that by our fourth quarter. And it was just insane to watch and very, very exciting. Now, I'm going to look at my piece of paper because this fuck up is very fresh that I really want to make sure I do its justice. But we were experiencing so much growth that by the time this past January hit, the reality set in. Here's the thing with retail. Sales plummet drastically in January. Returns and exchanges are at an all-time high. If you have a very successful Q4, all of your expenses come out in January. So all of that cash flow we had worked so hard to build up in our final quarter of the year, like, disappeared. Like, we had a 6-month runway and it literally disappeared in the matter of 6 weeks. I was anxious and staying up at night about how I was going to pay my people. I was anxious about, how the journey would continue. But, you figure it out. We were planning on raising money anyways this year, and we have an incredible group of investors. So we just started raising money a little bit earlier. And it is hard to ask people for money, but you do get really good at it as you keep practicing it. So we started raising money again. The business is fine now. Like, I'm literally in this fuck up right now, guys, living and breathing it. So I think, like, the biggest thing when I'm reflecting on this experience, because we had such an incredible last year and we're trying to keep that momentum and success, is, we underestimate the impact of what success actually means. And it's not just about pushing forward, but it's also being ready for what's going to come next. So if you don't have the right systems, mentorship, that cushion of cash flow to get you through, you're going to literally explode. So I've learned that success isn't just about selling more, it's also being prepared for what's going to happen after that. So I've learned a lot along my journey, but I'm here actually for the third time, honestly, because I'm so passionate about also supporting female founders figure out how to raise money, do these things. I'm sure you know the stat, only 2.7% of capital goes to women, and I've raised over $1 million with no background in what I'm doing. So thank you. My mission is to continue to support women. I've started my own community where we talk about real shit. A lot of the incredible women that are a part of that community are in this room right now. And I think the biggest thing I want to tell everybody that I've really been reflecting a lot on is I think the biggest failure as entrepreneurs that we have to prevent from happening is not living up to our full potential. So that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you.
Victoria, thank you for that. I feel like I have chills. That was such an incredible story. I think you were meant to speak tonight. I loved it. It was amazing. We're gonna jump into some Q&A now for Victoria. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll run the mic to you.